Welcome to the Organic Livestock Training on Origin of Livestock. In this training, we will discuss the Origin of Livestock rules in the NOP standards and how they apply to all organic, ruminant, and non-avian operations. It's important to understand the Origin of Livestock section of the regulation underwent a regulatory update, which was implemented on April 5, 2023. The overview in this training will provide you with an understanding of the regulatory requirements that are associated with the Origin of Livestock rule. Upon completion of this course, you will gain an understanding of Section 205.236 within the USDA NOP regulations and how it applies to organic operations. You'll learn the specific requirements and conditions for livestock to be considered organic, including birth and purchase records. Also understand the documentation and record-keeping requirements necessary to maintain compliance. Let's first get an understanding of the regulation. The Origin of Livestock section of the regulation is outlined at 205.236. It is also broken up into two parts, the requirements of origin for poultry animals and dairy animals. Some pieces are overarching to all livestock, but for this training, we will focus on ruminant livestock. Organic livestock products, such as milk and meat, must be from livestock that are under continuous organic management from the last third of gestation or pregnancy, with one exception. For dairy animals, it is also permissible for an operation to transition conventional animals to organic milk production. However, this can only be done one time. There can only be one transition event for an operation, and they may not purchase animals in the future that are designated with a transitioned status. All dairy replacement animals after that must be under continuous organic management from the last third of gestation. The details of transitioning dairy animals will be covered in another training, as there are very specific requirements and caveats. Please see Origin of Livestock Transitioning Dairy Animals for details on this part of 205.236. Next, let's cover what is strictly prohibited in the regulation for organic livestock. If an animal is removed from organic status for any reason and is managed conventionally, they cannot be recertified. There must not be a break in organic management of livestock. Animals cannot be retransitioned to organic status. It is permissible to utilize conventional breeder stock as long as they have been managed organically from the last third of gestation, if their offspring are to be considered organic. However, conventional breeder stock dairy animals that have not been under continuous organic management since the last third of gestation and transitioned dairy animals must never be represented as organic slaughter stock. They will never be slaughter eligible as organic. The next requirement is that the operation must preserve the identity of all organically managed animals. This includes transitioned animals as well as any conventional breeder stock that may be used. The following slides will cover some examples of maintaining records in this regard. Touching back to breeder stock, conventional animals may be used as breeding stock. Typical examples are bulls brought onto a dairy farm to diversify genetics. For female breeding stock, they must be fed organic, only receive organic treatments, and managed organic in all ways during the last third of gestation for their offspring to be considered organic. Detailed record keeping would be required in this regard if, for example, you plan to feed conventional alfalfa and grain to a breeding dairy cow for the first 185 days, then switch to organic for 95 days prior to calving. Organic management is also required during lactation if the animal is nursing their own offspring. Remember, the minimum mark is at least 1/3 of gestation. For split or parallel producers, a clear distinction in feed storage, housing, unapproved medication, etc. would also be needed. While there are other resources that discuss purchasing organic animals, we will give an overview here as they may be part of the origin of your livestock. There are several documents required for the purchase of any organic livestock, especially so for dairy or beef animals. Of course, the current organic certificate for the operation you are purchasing from, which will list slaughter-eligible cattle. This is now found in the OID, or Organic Integrity Database. There may be a required addendum that is issued by the Organic Certification Agency, so be sure to have that document as well. Contained in this packet of documents should be sales record or invoice, transportation record, brand inspection if interstate travel or as required by law, and any other supporting documents for the trip, like feed sources or organic certificates of any stopover points or third-party brokers involved. All documents in this packet should list the unique ID of each animal in the transaction and their organic status. Remember, transitioned animals can no longer be bought or sold unless a variance is obtained from the USDA and your certifier under very specific circumstances. For animals born on the farm, this is where their record-keeping journey begins. Whatever your method of record keeping, be sure your entries are consistent across your systems. With a new member joining the herd, enter their unique ID, date of birth, and dam ID. The dam ID is important to verify their mother was managed organically during the last third of gestation, a requirement for that offspring to be considered organic. Any healthcare inputs or supplements given to the calf must be recorded, as these first entries confirm their organic management since birth. For most certifiers, a herd list is required for all ruminant livestock on an annual basis. This herd list is evaluated as part of the operations OSP. A blank herd list template, which is optional, can be utilized by certified operations. You may have a software program that can provide all the necessary information required on the herd list, so filter that list and print for your records. A note on completing the herd list. All ruminants must have a unique identifier that can be traced throughout the operations records. This is generally the ear tag number, but other unique identifier may be sufficient, such as branding or tattoos. Also, the status of each animal, that is, if they are slaughter eligible, slaughter ineligible, or transitioned, is also required for each individual animal. If they were born on farm, the operation must record the date of birth as well as the dam ID, given that continuous organic management from the last third of gestation is required for a ruminant to be considered slaughter eligible. If they were purchased, you don't need the date of birth or the dam ID, but rather the source. Which certified operation did the animal originate from? And those purchase or sourcing records must include the status of the animal, in addition to the other purchase information. You can see from this form the origin of livestock born on farm or purchased play an important role in organic livestock record keeping. I hope you've learned some important information about the origin of organic livestock and the record keeping requirements to maintain compliance to the NOP standards and for your annual inspection. Communicate with your certifier if you have additional questions about the origin of livestock rules.